Hey guys, welcome back to the last cyber call of the year. Our, the unknown cyber podcast. Maybe we'll actually get a name next year, but I think we might be stuck with the unnamed or
Yeah, unnamed.
unnamed group. Anyway, figured we would cover do some highlights of the year, or figure out where we are in where things wound up in 2023 and where we're going to go forward with 24. I know, Chris, you had something near and dear to your heart to talk about today around Citrix.
Oh, this is the gift that just keeps on giving. Well, I thought we were going to start in January, but
we can do that.
Probably the biggest thing that we've seen. Well, I'll talk about it real quick. The biggest thing that we've seen since basically July is Citrix Bleed, and it's led to so many places being hacked. Boeing, Toyota Financial, looks like other things like that we've seen. Maybe Mr. Cooper, we don't know. First American Title got hacked last week. That may be something that has evolved there, but it's led to just this explosion in ransomware since October. And a lot of it has used that vulnerability as a jumping point into a customer, attack vector into a customer. And it's human error. There was a patch available. They could have patched it. They could have took care of it, and it just didn't do it. Comcast, prime example, they took 3 weeks. So it's kind of just like a lesson to be learned that all these attacks are humans not doing something or humans making a mistake. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily that you just throw your hands up in the air and you can't stop it. It's like there are things that people are doing that just are mistakes. And unfortunately, this is the reality we live in, and we have to understand the risks that we have, and we have to make sure that we have plans for it. So patching a major vulnerability on an external device to your company 3 weeks later, when it's knowingly being attacked, is probably not the way to conduct business.
And this is the same story over and over again, Chris.
Yeah.
If we go back years, even like the SQL errors, it was all people not doing their patches. And how do we fix that?
Too much stuff is done wild west, it seems, in IT. You ever notice that? Nobody really puts down plans. They don't have processes. They say, yeah, we have processes, but do they really follow them? Do they really have oversight in their organization that actually makes sure that the stuff that's getting done is actually getting done, or supposed to get done, is getting done? And the answer is no. I mean, I've worked in enterprise. I've worked in obviously small business. We've been supporting customers for a long time. And to be frank, MSPs have the same problem.
Sure.
I mean, we all have processes, right? But do you follow them 100% of the time? If you say you do, you're lying. Sorry. 4 of us sitting here, and we're lying if we say we follow them. They're followed 100% of the time.
Things happen.
Humans make mistakes.
They're a guideline. And, we could say, maps aren't perfect, but without, when I'm out on the road, I don't know where I am. I need to have some place to guide me at the end of the day.
You also need a compass, because if you don't have a compass, you're screwed on your map situation.
Yeah, exactly. But even like when you take off on a plane, like 80% of the time, the plane is off course, and it's constantly needing correction. And part of the problem sometimes is you go in there and you're not having those conversations afterwards on a continual basis of like, why did you make those changes, or why wasn't something followed, and getting to a resolution.
You're probably going to hate me for this. This sounds really bad, and we may get canceled for this, but you don't want to make a course correction when your plane is crashing.
No, I wouldn't.
You would prefer to do that before the plane crashes.
I'm saying the process beforehand.
Yeah, that's what
their guidelines, and why aren't you adhere? But that's consistently coming back and having those reviews.
So that's actually a great lead into something you want to talk about, Carl, of not following processes. And what happened with MGM this year?
Well, MGM and Caesars, they both got compromised, and it's still up in the air. Some of it has been claimed to be because of Aukey and patches. Again, we're going back into a major vendor having that issue. But what happened there was two groups. And this really I love telling this story because it just explains the complexity of cybercrime. You had one group called Scattered Spider, and all they do is exploits. They did phone exploits. So what they did was they got on a call with the help desk. They went on LinkedIn. They found the person's profile. They said, "Hey, I can't get in. Can you reset my password?" And you go, "Well, why would they do that?" You can actually Google YouTube videos where people have recordings of babies crying in the background. They've had help desks record that and send that off. I mean, when we have a password reset, we do have a verification tool that we use to make sure it's a live person. But for some reason, they didn't use that verification tool, or it was compromised. They don't know exactly that part of the details. But because of that call that went through, they were able to get the credentials. They contracted another group called Scattered. It's called Black Hat. Black Hat had the pet or Alpha or Alfie, and they go by so many different names. But what they did was they had the exploit software. They were able to get into systems. 90 hotel Caesars paid the ransom. MGM didn't. MGM had 30 properties closed, including elevators, door locks. People were locked out of their buildings. Restaurants were shut down. It was catastrophic for 10 days. Thank God there wasn't a fire in the building. That was to me one of the big things. And we don't know what happened because, I mean, in these super mega properties, people die all the time. So what could have been contributed to, emergency rescuers trying to come in and not being able to reach people at that point, unfortunately. So it was pretty devastating. But again, it comes down to human error, not having a proper verification method, or whatever the verification method they used wasn't properly stress tested. And that's where they were pointing back to maybe Auki was the problem, because that was probably where they were doing the verifications. I don't know that, but I'm speculating. They got $15 million out of Caesars, which I thought was incredible, because how many movies do we all watch with Ocean's 11 and Casino? And you take a chip off the table, you're gonna be sent into a back room with a guy with a hammer. And here these guys were able to do it on a phone call and get $7.5 million a piece.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say, like, you look at MGM's perspective, they didn't pay it, but it cost them well over $100 million.
Well, it's going to cost them both. We don't know exactly how much it's going to cost Caesar, because you and I both know they have to rip all that equipment out.
Well, MGM, we know a little bit. They admitted to at least, I think, $120 million, at least.
Yeah,
so
that's the
we know the starting point for that. So, even if MGM, it costs them $50 million, you always say don't pay the ransom, but who ended up in a better situation there?
Kind of wonder about the insurance companies. Probably were the ones that were the points about whether to or not pay the ransom.
MGM said that they had $200 million in insurance coverage, which I question, but that's another story.
I've got two takeaways on that, though, that kind of segues from our past discussion. You can't prevent everything and following processes, and then we kind of led into, well, you don't want to be correcting when the plane is crashing, but sometimes the plane crashes. And that's where those emergency disaster plans come in place, right? I mean, if there was a better one written that could have recovered more quickly, that would be good. But another big takeaway I got from that was training. Chris always says people are people make mistakes. 100% true. Minimizing it's really the name of the game. I mean, that help desk professional didn't have any kind of process in place to verify who was calling and should they reset this person's password. Those are really the two big failings there that led to a lot of financial loss and a lot of pain for a lot of people.
Well, or they probably had the process in place, they just didn't follow it. And what's the penalty?
Either way,
what's the penalty for not following it? Right?
They should have run training exercises where they did pretend to be somebody. Just like we, I know I'm pretty sure we all run phishing simulations for our clients.
Let's talk about the depth part of this, defense and depth part of this. So yes, a help desk person made a mistake, but where is the additional controls after that to minimize the impact?
Absolutely.
So we can talk all day about the entry point. We can talk all day about that, but there needs to be other controls in place that help minimize that blast radius, minimize that impact of that person's mistake, because we can't always rely on a person to make. It's impossible to make 100% of the right decisions 100% of the time. That's just not possible.
So your point is, when the mistake is made, how is that minimized? How can that not lead to this entire pretty scary situation?
And to be fair, for them specifically, or for any of these companies that got hit with Citrix Bleed, they clearly didn't have good controls post that. Like Comcast is saying we have advanced cybersecurity, but we waited 3 weeks to patch it. Okay, well, all the cybersecurity in the world doesn't fix an insecure configuration.
True.
You had a vulnerability you just didn't do. You didn't patch, right? So you can have all the cybersecurity stuff, and they got in, and then they didn't even notice for another 2 days post patching that they were hacked. Literally 6 to was it 3 to 6 days before that patch even came out. So
They missed the mark.
they didn't know. They had no clue. So yeah, they didn't have internal controls that actually were monitoring properly, or they weren't monitoring the right stuff. And now maybe they're making a course correction and they're adding to it, and that's great. We learn from mistakes. We learn from stuff like that. But that's the important thing I think that people need to take from this is like, yeah, people are gonna make mistakes, but you need to learn from it and you need to make corrections when that happens to fix those gaps and have other controls in place. And we can't stop everything. To Bob's point, like, it's gonna happen.
So
Matt,
consistency is key.
Some good stuff came out of the U.S. government this year. Specifically, I'm thinking around the June 9th deadline of providing more visibility for non-banking financial institutions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's something.
SEC rules too, December 18th.
Yeah.
SEC rules. So all the public companies that experience a breach, what is it? 2 days they have to report, Chris?
4
days. 4 days after discovering the breach, they have to file a report with the SEC. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, we're seeing that. I mean, even the New York State Shield Act and the Department of Finance for New York State also had increased rules as far as reporting and new lower minimums. So I'm sure that's going to hit the rest of the country too.
And Chris, you at the beginning of the call, you mentioned the title agency that had a data breach. What I thought was interesting there was that's a California-based company, and they just paid $1 million fine to New York.
Yeah.
So people are like, well, I don't have to worry about New York or worry about other venues. Well, that's not the case anymore.
It's actually tougher because you can get multiple fined from multiple different agencies.
Not to mention, they're the second title company that got hit. Fidelity National Financial got hit in November, and they had title companies. I think they're either a title company or they have title companies underneath them. So that's a lot of personal information.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Tremendous amount.
Can you imagine,
Everything
especially
you need to open credit.
Imagine this: you're trying to buy a house right now, you're trying to close on it, and your title company gets hit with ransomware, and now you're sitting there, you can't close on your house.
On top of that, I mean, even before you even get to ransomware, title theft is something that's very real that can happen.
Oh yeah, when they just take your property.
Yeah, they just take it right from out. And there's been many cases where they've taken a house from somebody right underneath them.
Or if you're Mr. Cooper, you just applied for a mortgage and just got yourself stolen anyway.
Oh.
But I think we want to talk about something positive, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the happy moments.
All right.
Did we beat the bad guys just a little bit this year?
Let's talk. Overall, I mean, Hive got taken down in January. They were a huge organization. They got all of their stuff seized. There's been some other ones that have been seized. I think Ragnar, Ransom VC was another one. There's been a handful that have been taken down by legal action. So when you look at it from a worldwide perspective, there's been really good work with agencies between countries working together to take down infrastructure, right? Which is one of the hardest things because legally, jurisdiction wise, like we don't have any jurisdiction outside the United States, so we have to work within the realms of each country and what they want to do. So Interpol's been key to this, individual countries in general. But is it really stopping anything? I mean, you could argue that it basically shuts them down. They just rebrand as somebody different and come back in 6 months.
It's like the police. You have police on the corners. Do they stop crime, or do they prevent it, or they reduce the reaction of crime? Yeah. And if they're not there, could it be even worse than it is? And that's the other side of it. The other part that you never see is like, how bad could it be if they weren't there?
Yeah, that's a fair point. One of the things I don't think we talk about just in general is the way that they program the ransomware. The signature is hard to get rid of because everybody like how you write is very identifiable. how you speak is identifiable as a person, right? They can pretty much figure that out. Same thing with code. When these people write these codes, even though they move on to different organizations, that's how they really kind of figure out, like, when a group breaks up, like, what group the people that wrote the new ransomware were probably a part of, because they just look at that code and they're like, well, this is a signature of somebody that worked here before, right?
Yep.
So you don't really escape it. And I think Lockbit was interviewed recently because LV got, part of their stuff seized on Tor, but then they spun up other new servers and got back online. But Lockbit was talking about how they were worried about the same thing happening to them, but they said that they probably wouldn't rebrand because of the same thing I just talked about, because everybody know that they were just the same Lockbit people. They were just under a different brand.
It's easy to find.
So, yeah, it's easy to know who somebody was.
The interview. That's interesting. Like,
VX Underground.
okay.
Shout out to them. If you don't follow them, they do some really good stuff on X, Twitter.
What is that called again, Chris?
VX Underground.
VX Underground. Okay.
Cool. So why don't we end that on a happy note that, yes, the law enforcement agencies are working together. And we're seeing a lot of cooperation between both private sector and the government agencies, really helping to see what's going on. But there's still a lot going on out there that the government doesn't even know about, because people stick their head in the sand. But right now, let's move on and try and keep people safe for this year. And like Matt said,
2024.
Let's keep people trained, get people trained and educated, and go from there. So, Mr. Matt, any parting words for us?
No. Happy New Year. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of bad news this year, but a lot of good things happened too. Nobody died that I know of. Good start. People are learning. Agencies are working together. I consider those all great things. It's baby steps, and we're getting there.
And you survived Christmas with 4 kids.
I did, and it was actually fun. A lot of wrapping paper, so much wrapping paper, so much noise.
I don't have to deal with that, so good for you. Next week when we shoot,
we move from wrapping paper to gift cards. That's what everybody wants.
Yes.
Not even physical gift cards, digital ones. Make it even better. Next week you'll know my mood next week, because if Michigan doesn't beat Alabama, I'm not going to be. Maybe by Thursday I'll be okay. Friday I'll be okay, but I won't be okay. But hey, next week we're going to talk. I think we want to. We'll drop this little nugget. We're going to talk about trends we see for 2024. How about that?
Sounds good.
Keep them wanting next week. Keep them wanting more.
That's right.
Okay, guys. See you all next week.
All right. Have a good
Happy
weekend.
New Year.
Happy New Year.